What happens when life takes you to the brink and you come face to face with death, only to be pulled back? Tonight, we'll meet those who've had a near-death experience, moments where the heart stops, the body fades, but the mind keeps going. Some say it's a glimpse of the afterlife, others call it hallucination. But whether it's the bright light, the tunnel, or something far darker, one thing's certain: coming back is just the beginning. But when you come back, what exactly follows you home? Let's dive in and see what lies beyond. Join us as we explore what really waits on the other side. A peaceful drive home after a weekend retreat seems like the perfect end to a relaxing getaway, right? But for one artist, that late-night fog-covered road held something far darker than the quiet of the night. What happens when you collide with the unknown and the past refuses to let go? Let's take a drive, but be warned. Not everything that lies on the road is dead.
This story chills me to the bone every time I think about it. It all started a few months ago. I was driving home from this godforsaken artist retreat upstate. I know, artist retreat sounds all peaceful and crap, but this one was more like a haunted cabin in the woods. Anyway, it was late, way past midnight, and the 2-lane road was swallowed up by thick fog. I could barely see 10 feet in front of my car. Suddenly, bam! My car slammed into something. I jolted forward, my head whipping against the headrest. When I came to, everything was silent except for this eerie ringing in my ears. I was dazed, my vision blurry. I remember fumbling for my phone, the screen cracked like a spider web across my reflection. No signal. Typical. I forced open the door and stepped out into the thick, cold air. The fog was so dense it felt like I could cut it with a knife. As my eyes adjusted, I saw it. The mangled wreck of my car, half swallowed by the trees on the side of the road. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was the figure lying a few feet away. It was a woman. Her body was twisted at an unnatural angle, her limbs bent like broken twigs. Her eyes were wide open, staring vacantly at the sky. I stumbled towards her, my heart pounding in my chest. I reached out to check for a pulse, but something stopped me. It was her skin. It was cold, deathly cold, and as I touched her wrist, I swear I felt something shift beneath my fingers. Suddenly, the fog around me started to swirl. It was like something was being pulled into the air, a vortex of white mist. I tried to step back, to run, but my feet were rooted to the spot. And then I saw the woman's face. It was changing, contorting, her features melting away like wax. Her lips stretched into a grotesque grin, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Her eyes now burned with a malevolent fire. A low growl rumbled from her throat, and I just knew, that whatever was standing before me was no longer human. The last thing I remember was a searing pain in my head, like a hot poker being driven into my skull. Then everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. They told me they found me unconscious by my car. They said I was lucky to be alive. But something has changed since then. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that road. The fog, the twisted metal, the woman's face contorting into something monstrous. And the eyes, burning into me, filled with a hunger that chilled me to the bone. They ran all sorts of tests, poked and prodded me like a lab rat. Concussion, they said. Explain the memory gaps. the headaches that felt like tiny ice picks stabbing my brain, but they couldn't explain the nightmares. I left the hospital a week later, a walking bundle of nerves. Couldn't drive, couldn't sleep, couldn't look at fog without feeling a wave of terror wash over me. My friends tried to be understanding, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. They thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. This night, I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing like a trapped bird. The nightmare. Always the nightmare. But this time, something was different. There was a sound, a low humming, coming from the corner of my room. I sat up, every muscle in my body screaming at me to stay put. The humming grew louder, morphing into a faint melody. It was haunting, melancholic, like a lullaby sung by a ghost. And it was drawing me in. Against my better judgment, I got out of bed and walked towards the sound. My hand trembled as I reached for the light switch, but the bulb flickered and died, plunging me into darkness. The humming intensified, vibrating through the air. Then I saw it. A faint glow emanating from the corner of the room. As I got closer, the glow took shape, revealing a swirling vortex of white mist. The fog. It was here, in my room. I was terrified, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It was like something was holding me captive, an invisible force pulling me closer to the swirling abyss. And then, a voice, a whisper, barely audible, yet it seemed to echo through my very soul.
You saw.
It rasped, the voice like dry leaves scraping against pavement.
You saw, and now you know.
I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed. The fog pulsed, and for a fleeting moment I saw her again, the woman from the road. But this time, her face wasn't contorted in a grotesque grin. It was filled with a chilling sadness, an ancient sorrow that seemed to seep into my bones. Then, as quickly as it appeared, the fog vanished. The humming ceased, leaving behind an eerie silence. I was left standing there, alone in the darkness, my heart pounding against my ribs like a war drum. So tonight, I didn't sleep. I was sitting with my laptop on my bed all night, my eyes wide open, waiting for the fog to return. It didn't. But I know, deep down, that it isn't over. Whatever I had glimpsed tonight, whatever secret I had stumbled upon, it isn't finished with me yet. And somehow, I know this is only the beginning. I will keep you up to date if anything new happens, if I can. You guys, I don't even know where to start. It's been weeks since my last post. Weeks since the fog came to my apartment. I wish I could say it was just a bad dream, that my head was finally playing tricks on me for real this time. But I can't. Because they've escalated. Big time. Remember how I said it felt like the beginning? Yeah, understatement of the century. After that night, the humming, the fog, it became a nightly occurrence. Always the same. The humming would start low, then build, drawing me from my sleep. The fog would seep in under the door, through the cracks in the walls, like it was alive, hungry. And her voice, that goddamn voice, would whisper to me in the dark.
You can't hide. You're already one of us.
I tried everything. Sleeping pills, white noise, even burning sage like some kind of cliché horror movie. Nothing worked. The fog always found me. And each time it felt colder, closer, like it was wrapping itself around me, suffocating me. Then came the visions. Flashes of things I couldn't explain. A dark road, rain slicked and endless. A figure standing in the distance, shrouded in shadow. and the eyes, burning with a cold, malevolent fire. I knew I couldn't keep this up. I was falling apart, losing my grip on reality. My friends were scared of me, my family at their wits' end. I was a ghost haunting my own life. Then, last night, it happened. I was lying in bed, trying to convince myself it was all in my head, when the humming started. This time, it was louder, more insistent, vibrating through my bones. The room temperature plummeted, my breath fogging in the air. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The fog was already swirling around me, thick and suffocating. I could barely breathe, let alone scream. And then I saw her. She emerged from the fog, her form solidifying before my eyes. The woman from the road. But this time, there was no sadness in her eyes, only a terrifying hunger. Her skin was deathly pale, her lips pulled back in a grotesque snarl. She lunged at me, her cold, clammy hands reaching for my throat. I tried to fight back, to scream, but the fog was choking me, stealing my breath. I was going to die, right here, right now, at the hands of this thing. But then, as her fingers closed around my throat, something shifted. The air crackled with energy, the room bathed in an ethereal white light. The woman shrieked, a sound that seemed to tear through my very soul, and recoiled as if burned. Standing in the doorway, bathed in the white light, was a figure, tall and imposing, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to burn through the fog. He was dressed in simple clothes, but there was an aura of power around him, an ancient energy that sent shivers down my spine.
Let her go.
He commanded, his voice deep and resonant, echoing with an authority that made my blood run cold. The woman, the thing, snarled, her grip on my throat tightening.
She's mine.
She hissed, her voice like nails scraping against a chalkboard.
She saw. She knows.
The man stepped forward, his eyes never leaving hers.
She doesn't belong to you,
He said, his voice calm but laced with steel.
and she won't be joining you.
He raised his hand, and the room pulsed with energy. The fog churned violently, the woman screaming in fury as she was pulled back, away from me. She thrashed and writhed, her form flickering in and out of existence. But it was no use. The man held her captive with a mere thought. Then, with a final ear-splitting shriek, she vanished. The fog dissipated as quickly as it had appeared, the room returning to its normal temperature. The only evidence of the struggle was the lingering scent of ozone and the pounding of my own heart. I lay there, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. The man turned to me, his expression unreadable.
You're safe now.
He said, his voice softer this time.
She won't bother you again.
Who was that? I stammered, my voice hoarse. What did she want? The man sighed, a weary sound.
She was lost,
He said, his gaze distant.
trapped between this world and the next. She sought to drag you down with her.
But why me? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He looked at me then, his blue eyes piercing through me.
Because you saw her.
He said,
You acknowledged her pain, and in doing so, you inadvertently gave her a way to reach out.
He paused, then continued.
But you also possess a strength she didn't anticipate, a light that burns brighter than you realize.
He stepped closer, his hand hovering over mine for a moment before he withdrew it.
You're safe now, but be careful who you choose to see. Not all who are lost wish to be found.
And with that, he was gone. Vanished into thin air, leaving me alone with my racing heart and a head full of questions that would likely never be answered. I don't know who he was. An angel, a guardian, or something else entirely. But I do know one thing. I'm alive because of him. And whatever that thing was, it's gone. He made sure of that. The humming is gone. The fog is just a distant memory. I'm still scared, still haunted by what I saw, what I experienced. But I'm also grateful. Grateful to be alive. Grateful for the second chance. But for now, I'm taking it one day at a time. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need a drink. And maybe a therapist.
So, was it just a bad dream? Or has our driver seen something the rest of us can't? Either way, it's clear that not all hitchhikers are looking for a ride. Some just want to take you on a one-way trip. But hey, next time you're driving through the fog, just make sure you're the only one in the car. Unless, of course, you enjoy a little company. Sometimes, life takes us to the edge, and sometimes, we go a little further than we ever expected. Vinny thought his journey was over, but little did he know, it was only just beginning.
My name is Vinny Todd Tolman. Before my near-death experience as a youthful young 20-some-year-old, I was out exploring life. I've traveled the world for many different jobs, and I used to do bodybuilding. Back in January 2003, it started with a new supplement that me and a really good friend of mine had purchased online. We decided, hey, we're going to take this on a Saturday. We planned to go up and see a car show, do a workout at the gym, and just have a fun Saturday. When we got there to hit my buddy's place, we took this new supplement and immediately felt something was wrong. It felt almost as if cold ice started pumping through our veins. It felt like our whole body was starting to get cold, and I explained to my buddy that, hey, we should probably go get something to eat, otherwise we're going to be really sick. So we went down the street a few blocks to this fast food joint. We go in there, and as soon as I go in, I went straight into the bathroom. I felt like I was going to throw up or vomit. My buddy, he went in, he collapsed on the first booth. He started to throw up, to vomit on the table. The manager of the restaurant called 911. They got him hauled away in an ambulance almost immediately right away, and he turned out to be totally fine. They released him from the hospital the very next day. But meanwhile, me inside that bathroom, I myself start to vomit while I'm passed out on my back. And what happens is when you vomit on your back like that, you aspirate, you suffocate. And that's what happened to me. I died right there and then on the bathroom floor. I suffocated, and about 45 minutes later, the manager of the restaurant finally opened up that bathroom after a customer kept asking him to open it for him. He opened it and sees this dead body on the ground. He called 911, and from my point of view, I went directly from consciousness to feeling dizziness, as if the room is spinning on me. And then, out of nowhere, I'm watching. I'm just watching this scene unfold in front of me, and I'm watching a dead body on the ground. I'm watching a manager call 911. I'm watching even the customer asking to have the manager open the door, and it's very weird and odd to me because I can hear every thought in anyone's head that is near me. But it didn't dawn on me that this dead body I was seeing was me, because the body didn't look like me. The neck had actually already swollen wider than the jaw. There was very purple and yellow tones on the skin. It almost didn't look human, and I didn't think for a second that that was me, because me was up here watching what was going on. I watched them bag this body when the ambulance comes. They pronounce it dead. They put it in a body bag, put it on a gurney, and they put it in the back of the ambulance. Meanwhile, there's 3 medics that show up. There's a rookie who's brand new. He's sitting in the back with the body. The other 2 are out getting paperwork done. I could feel his dismay because he felt like,
I wanted to be a medic. I wanted to be an EMT to make a difference.
and he felt that he wasn't making that difference. He felt that these veteran medics didn't try for very long to resuscitate the body. He felt they should have tried for 20 minutes, not just 5 minutes. They're going down the street, and as they pull away from the scene, I see this glow start to form. It looked like a little miniature sun starting to glow in the heart space on the rookie medic who's sitting in the back of the ambulance. I see it start to glow, and it got brighter and brighter. And then I heard very loudly,
This one is not dead.
I didn't know where that came from, but I definitely heard it. And I could tell that the rookie medic heard it too. He froze. He kind of froze as soon as that was said, but he didn't do anything about it. I could hear him shrugging it off, as that must have just been your imagination. As they went another block down the road, the lights started to glow even brighter, and I heard that voice for a second time.
This one is not dead.
And on that second time, he reacted. He unzipped the body bag and undid a couple of straps around the body so that he could reach in and feel around the neck area for a pulse. He didn't feel a pulse. It didn't stop him. He kept going. He was going to attempt resuscitation, so he forced oxygen into the lungs. He hooked up the body to a defibrillator while the alarm is going off, and the other two medics start just yelling at him, saying,
You're going to get fired. You gotta stop this. Stop what you're doing. You're desiccating a dead body. This is illegal.
But he didn't care. He went ahead and let the first charge happen. And nothing happened. After the first charge, he went ahead and let it recharge for a second time, and they were still chewing him out. But when the second charge happened, there was one single heartbeat. It allowed the other two medics to wait and watch. They knew he was going to go for a third round, and right after, within seconds of that, third charge. There was a steady but faint heartbeat, so the team began resuscitation procedures of injecting things and doing all sorts of things for the body. But the body was having a really hard time with coming back. It was going into seizures, and they were strapping the body down. I was watching the strapping going on. I didn't feel anything until they got to the left arm. When they strapped the left arm, I'm left-handed, by the way, I felt them strapping my left arm. And this was the first inkling, the first idea that what I'd been watching this whole time was my very own death. This is when I went to essentially the darkest place I've ever gone in my life. I had an ego voice saying, "You're such an idiot. How could you not know that what you've been watching this whole time was your own death? How could you not know that?" And as I started to realize, I then started to see in very quick flashes all the negative influences I had on other people in my whole life. The things that I did to hurt people on accident or on purpose. I saw it not just through my eyes, but through their eyes, how it impacted them. And I started to feel this voice coming out of me saying, "You're not worth saving. Look at all this bad that you've done in your life." But then, all of a sudden, in the same speed, I started to see all the good that I did. And there was a lot more good than I had ever done. Way more. And I saw how much change I was able to impact people's lives in good ways. And then this love started to pour over me from behind me. It's so hard to describe in words because it's a love that we don't have. It's an unconditional, pure love that doesn't exist in this space. This love poured over me, and it had such a profound effect on me. I had a pretty rough upbringing. I had some darkness inside of me, and this love flushed it out, sealed it up, made it whole. With all of this is happening, I'm realizing that all of this love and this light and this energy that is coming from behind me is coming from a man standing behind me. He has very pink skin, a very long white beard, and long white hair. His eyes pierce right through you, and they essentially know not who you thought you were, but who you really were. My first thought was, "Are you God?" And this gentleman just laughed. He said,
No, I'm not God.
My follow-up question was, "You must be Jesus then. Even though you don't look like Jesus, you must be Jesus." And he laughed at that as well and said,
No, son, I'm not Jesus. But I am here for you. I'm here to be your guide. I'm here to help you go wherever you want to go.
And he explained that I could go back to my life or I could go forward with him, and he shows me what's next for me, what's next in line for my life. And of course, I didn't want to go back to the body. There was no question. The body to me meant mistakes. It meant failures. It meant pain. It meant struggle. Everything that I felt coming from this gentleman was absolute peace and unconditional love, and I wanted that. I wanted more of that. Whatever that was, that's what I wanted. So I told him, I want to go with you. Wherever you're going, that's where I want to go. And he explained to me that we were going to start a journey. This journey was going to be from a lower understanding and a lower density to a much higher frequency and a much higher understanding. We weren't just going to travel from space to space, but we're going to travel from low dimension to high dimension. And as we're doing that, I had to raise my frequency. I had to raise my dimensional vibration to be able to match his, to keep going with him. I had to fully embrace these major principles to get where we were going to go. I would have thought that the first principle was going to be love, but it wasn't. The first principle was authenticity. I had to realize that all of us are not authentic in this world, that the most authentic people in our world in this earthly life are the very young and the very old. That is because they have nothing to lose and nothing to gain by being inauthentic. And he explained to me that through this life, we put different facades on the outside of us. We put different masks on for different people. And that I needed to get to a point where I could be the same person no matter who I was around. That was actually quite hard for me. I didn't realize that I had put on so many masks. But he helped me peel those all away one at a time and start building cleanly on a new foundation. And that's what he did with authenticity. Then he brought me to understand the purpose of life, why we come here. I was taught something very different in my church and in my upbringing. I was taught more that we're here to be proven and to be tested. But it was very clear that our life here is not a courtroom but a classroom. That we're here to learn, to grow, to exercise the power of creation. As we existed in heaven before, God wanted for us to grow. We had to leave home and we had to go through a veil of forgetfulness because His love is so strong and so powerful that even the remembrance of that love would prevent us from having true free agency. We would still be making decisions out of obligation of that love. One of the most important things I learned was to master my thoughts, because truly our thoughts themselves create. They end up becoming who we are. They become our character and where we go in our life. It's so important for us to come from an energy of love with our thinking, especially when we think about ourselves. I was led to know that his name is Drake. Drake led me to know that this space was lit from within. The light in this space of heaven, it comes from within everything. That's why there's so many colors we don't have here, because the actual existence of light is different, because everything glows there. Everything, and when I say glow, I don't mean like glow in the dark, I mean glow like our sun glows. And to even bring a single blade of grass here to our earth, it would explode. There's so much energy in a single blade of grass there, and we're at such a low density here that we couldn't vibrate at that such high frequency. We would be incinerated just to bring that here. That's why there is this tunnel or this journey that we have to go through. For us to get to heaven, we have to really ramp up our frequency to be able to get there. And as I did, I touched down. I got into heaven. I got to feel the grass again. The grass was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire existence. The grass had a distinct loving music frequency coming from it. Just to even be near it, you would feel connected to everything in heaven. It was such a beautiful experience, and as I'm literally glowing in this space, I'm feeling the connectedness of the grass and all the plants and the water and the healing power of this water. When my guide Drake pulls me aside, he says,
Vinny, this is going to be very hard, but it's going to be worth it.
And out of nowhere, I start hearing my brother's voice. My brother from Earth. I hear his voice as loud as he's speaking in my own ear. He is giving a special prayer. Now, meanwhile, I've been in a coma. I've been brain dead for 3 days. My brother is standing over my body and giving me a love that I didn't know he had for me. As he said this prayer over me, and he finished with the sentence,
I bless you to be made whole.
here I was in heaven. I finally felt whole. But this blessing to make me whole, it tore me away from there. Before I was taken away, I got this amazing hug from Drake. I got to feel and understand the cosmos. I got to feel and understand what all of this means. Why we're here. Why there's time. Why there's struggle. I learned it all. I just felt pure love. Love that I always thought I never deserved. Love that I still strive to be worthy of today. It was just a pristine experience to feel that power. A power that I didn't know existed in all the cosmos. And then I was forced back. The next thing I remember, I woke up out of a 3-day coma being brain dead. I pulled every tube, every sensor off of me. I felt so confined, and the reason I felt so confined is who we really are is much larger than this physical form. So I woke up at 1:11 in the morning. I was checked out at 7:30 a.m. Even though every single department tried to resist and did not want me to go, I still signed all the waivers. I got out of there and I went jogging that day and had no problems whatsoever. I had no residing effects of my death other than I'm a different person now.
Vinny's glimpse of the other side brought him more than just peace. It brought him a second chance. Funny how sometimes we have to leave this world to realize how much there is to live for in it. But hey, maybe heaven just wasn't ready for a bodybuilder with bad supplements. What if dying wasn't the end, but just the beginning of many lives? For one man, a simple drive home turned into a journey across time, space, and even species. Was it a glimpse into his past, or a preview of what's to come?
Okay, so I gotta tell you something. Something insane. Something I can't explain. I died. Or at least, I almost died. And I saw things. My brain is blocking some of it out, but I'm trying to remember as best as I can. Because maybe, just maybe, if I understand what I saw, I can understand what it all means. I was driving home from work, late, exhausted. Rain was coming down in sheets, the road slick as ice. Then, headlights. A deer. The sickening crunch of metal, the world spinning. Then, nothing. Except, not nothing. I don't know if I'm alive or dead, but I'm definitely somewhere. It was like everything. A swirling kaleidoscope of colors and sounds and faces. So many faces staring at me with eyes that knew secrets I'd forgotten. Like they knew me. Like they were me. The first face. Ancient Egypt. I was this skinny dude, sun-baked skin, brown eyes. I was part of a massive work crew, thousands of us, toiling under the relentless sun. We were building this gigantic pyramid, the tomb for some pharaoh dude. I remember the chants of the overseers, the crack of their whips, the constant fear of punishment. I could feel the whip, even though it wasn't really there. The pain, the exhaustion, the hopelessness. It was all so real. We were fed scraps, barely enough to keep us alive. I remember the taste of dust, the grit between my teeth, the way my muscles screamed with every step, the despair of a life spent in servitude, the crushing weight of the stones. I saw the slow, agonizing death of my friend, a young boy who collapsed from exhaustion and was left to die in the sun. And I saw my body buried in a shallow mass grave, forgotten by history. Then, a shift. The Mayan jungle. Humidity. Me and some other girls around my age, maybe 10 to 12 years old, are adorned with beautiful feathers and jade. I could see intricate patterns painted on our skins and fear in their eyes. The high priest is holding this obsidian knife, about to perform a sacrifice. It wasn't just a sacrifice. It was a ritual, elaborate, terrifying. I remember the chanting, the drums, the intoxicating smell of incense mixed with the coppery tang of blood, what almost made me gag. And then, the warm gush of blood, the screams, the desperate pleas for mercy, the chilling silence that followed, and the pain. I died there, on that altar, consumed by the ritual, a servant to a bloodthirsty god. Next thing I know, I'm in this crazy city. Gleaming white buildings that seemed to defy gravity, shimmering with an inner light. It was like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it was a paradise. This incredible city was called Atlantis. I was a soldier, wearing this cool, shimmering armor. Around me, the city pulsed with an energy I could almost feel, a symphony of light and sound. But then, the tremors started. The ground shook, buildings swayed, the sky was burning, and the ocean began to boil. Fiery streaks tore through the clouds as this thing, this creature, rose from the depths of the ocean. Huge, with tentacles that reached towards the sky, and this roar that shook the whole city. We fought desperately, but it was hopeless. Our weapons were useless against it. I remember the fire, the screams, the feeling of the ground crumbling beneath my feet as the city plunged into the ocean. I died there, defending a lost civilization against an unimaginable horror. Then, things got weird. The vortex spun me away, this time to a place that was different. Purple sky, 2 suns, these tree people things. I was one of them. Rooted to the ground, but my mind, it was everywhere. I was connected to the entire forest, a network of consciousness. I could communicate with the other trees, sharing thoughts, warnings, and emotions. For a very long time, I was an observer of a world both beautiful and terrifying. I could feel the wind rustling my leaves, the sun on my branches, the rain nourishing my roots. It was peaceful, in a way, but also kind of creepy. It was a slow, deliberate existence, a life intertwined with the natural world. I don't remember dying there, just fading, becoming part of the forest, absorbed into the collective consciousness. Then, darkness. Total, suffocating darkness. The darkness was absolute, broken only by the flickering flames of our torches. The air thick with the smell of damp earth and something else. I was in this huge cave with these other people. I was part of a tribe, worshipping a creature. The creature we worshipped, it was a being of pure darkness, a shapeless mass that dwelled in the deepest parts of that cave. We sacrificed our own people to it, one at a time, hoping to appease its hunger so the rest of us could survive. I remember the screams echoing in the darkness. I remember the cold, the hunger. I remember living there in fear. And I remember being fed to that creature, a sacrifice to an unimaginable evil. Another flash, and I'm in this super advanced city. Sleek metallic buildings, shimmering towers that pierced the clouds, flying cars, beings of pure light. It was like a futuristic utopia. Advanced technology, no poverty, no disease. But there was a coldness to it, a lack of humanity. I was a scientist, working on some kind of energy source. I don't remember exactly, only that this project promised to unlock the secrets of the universe. But the pressure was immense, the expectations crushing. We were driven, obsessed, consumed by our work. There was also this feeling of dread, like something bad was coming. I remember the sterile environment, the hum of the machines, the growing sense of unease, and the feeling that we were playing with forces we didn't understand. I died there, a cog in a perfect machine, consumed by the very technology we created. And then, fur, wet nose, a wagging tail. I was a dog, so pure, just a scruffy mutt roaming the streets, sniffing everything, chasing squirrels, barking at mailmen. It was simple. I remember the kindness of a stranger who offered me a piece of bread and the cruelty of another who kicked me. The feel of the sun on my fur, the smell of the rain on the pavement, the joy of a good belly rub, and the taste of… Anyways, it was a life stripped bare of everything but the basic instincts, with the only purpose to love unconditionally. I died there, old and tired, curled up in the warm home of my family. Then, the vortex collapsed. I gasped, my lungs burning, my body screaming in protest. I woke up, in the car. The paramedics were cutting me out of the wreckage. Alive. It's still messing with my head. The world feels weird, like I'm seeing it for the first time. Those memories, those lives, they're so vivid, so real. Were they hallucinations brought on by trauma, dreams, past lives? I don't know. I don't know what it all means. All I know is that it changed me. I'll never look at life or death the same way again. Like a veil has been lifted, revealing the infinite possibilities, the endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. But what if those other deaths weren't past lives? What if they were previews? So, Reddit, tell me, am I crazy?
7 lives, 7 deaths, and 1 man left wondering. What does it all mean? Was he tapping into memories from long ago, or getting a sneak peek at his future farewells? One thing's for sure. Next time, he might want to skip the drive. After all, how many times can you die before it sticks? Sometimes the past has a way of catching up to us, even when it's been buried 6 feet under. For one woman, her father's passing led to far more than just grief. Could the man who once cast a shadow on her life now be the one saving her from beyond the grave? Or was it all just a twisted coincidence?
Hey, Reddit. I want to stay anonymous, but I am a 30-year-old female from Germany. This isn't about a near-death experience, but I have something paranormal to share about my father's death. Growing up, my relationship with my dad wasn't great. I don't want to speak ill of him, but my childhood was marked by both physical and emotional abuse. We hadn't been in contact for years, but when I heard he was sick, I felt bad about staying away for so long. After all, he was still my father. So, I reached out to him. His diabetes had gotten worse, and after a surgery a few years ago, I decided to move back into his house to take care of him. Surprisingly, our relationship improved. Once his health stabilized, he moved abroad to his girlfriend, and I stayed in his house. About a year ago, he passed away suddenly, and I was devastated. I had visited him once abroad, and we kept in touch through calls every 1 to 2 weeks. While our conversations weren't deeply personal, it was the best relationship we ever had, and for that I was grateful. At the same time, I was in a purpose relationship with a guy I'll call Justin. We met online, and since he was going through some trouble, I let him move into my house. It was a practical arrangement. He did all the chores, and in return, he could live rent-free. Things were fine for a while, but then my father died. One Monday morning around 6 a.m., I woke up to my phone ringing. Who would call me this early in the morning? I had 5 missed calls and a message from my stepmom. My heart dropped. Something couldn't be right. I unlocked the phone to read the message. Your father is dead. That's when she called me again. She told me that he had been found in his bed. Despite our troubled past, I was overwhelmed with sadness. We had finally found some peace in our relationship, and now he was gone. Justin wasn't home at the time, which was unusual. His phone was off, but honestly, I didn't care much at that moment. I called off work and spent the next days grieving. Justin didn't come home for 2 days, which, in a way, was a relief because I could mourn in peace. When he returned, he had some bizarre story about being followed, beaten up, and robbed of his electric scooter. He gave me more excuses about family problems, but I barely paid attention. I told him what happened and that I'd be home for 2 weeks. He offered to switch to morning shifts to be around for me in the afternoons and evenings. It was the first time I'd be home in the mornings since we started living together, as I usually worked during the day. So for now, I planned on staying home for at least the next 2 weeks. I wasn't sure what I am going to do. I didn't know what to expect, what would happen next. But what happened next? I'm still shaken up when I think about it. A few days later, I decided to go through my father's belongings in the downstairs area, where he used to live before moving abroad. I hadn't been in there since he left. Walking into the room brought back a flood of emotions, and I ended up crying while sorting through his things. Among his papers, I found a letter he had written to me, a testimony. It was full of legal details, but what hit me the most, he wrote that he had always been proud of me and that he loved me. I completely broke down. I was an emotional wreck. You maybe wonder why. The things he wrote were nice, right? It was the first time in my life I had ever heard or read that my father was proud of me or that he loved me. It filled me with both immense happiness and deep sadness. I had spent my whole life yearning to hear those words, and now, after 30 years, I finally had. And now he's gone. I'd never get the chance to tell him I loved him too, or that I forgave him for everything from my childhood. We never talked about our past, never showed affection, and now, we never would. One afternoon, while sitting on my living room sofa, I heard a faint vibrating sound. At first, I ignored it, but it kept happening. Curious, I followed the sound to a shelf Justin used for his clothes. I normally didn't go through his stuff, but the sound wouldn't stop, so I opened the shelf. I found not 1, but 4 smartphones buried under his clothes. 2 of the phones belonged to my father, and they should have been downstairs. None of them were vibrating at that moment, and I just stood there, looking. Did Justin go downstairs and take them? That's when I saw some unopened letters. They were addressed to my father, and some to me. I was so confused. I immediately opened all the letters, my heart racing. What is going on? There were 12 letters, all bills or reminders for unpaid bills. Smartphones, PlayStation, electro scooter. Then I saw the model of the electro scooter. It was the same like Justin's, the one he said got stolen. As I stood there, confused and upset, one of my father's phones suddenly lit up and started vibrating. I unlocked it, and without me touching anything, the Facebook Messenger app opened by itself. A chat scrolled slowly, revealing messages between someone and various women. None of this made sense. My father didn't have Facebook. Then the phone switched profiles, and to my horror, I saw a profile picture of me. But I didn't have a Facebook account at that time. One chat revealed a conversation between me and Justin's best friend, full of inappropriate messages. It dawned on me. Justin was behind all of this. He had created a fake profile, pretending to be me, and had been chatting with his best friend, Dennis, for who knows how long. Dennis didn't seem to know that this wasn't really me. I cringed seeing this. Then the phone died. I tried turning it back on but couldn't find a charger that fit. I threw them back into the shelf and sat down to process everything. There were no unanswered or incoming messages or calls, so I still don't know where the first vibrations came from. But it must have been the phone vibrating. How did I see the chats opening and scrolling all by themselves without me touching anything? And then, not only did I realize Justin had been using fake accounts, ordering things in my father's and my names, and hiding the bills, but now this twisted discovery. Him impersonating me online. It was so bizarre, pretending to be me and having dirty conversations with his best friend. Who does that? I had only met his friend once, and briefly, but the messages sounded like we knew each other well and talked regularly. I think I sat there for hours in shock, just thinking, trying to make sense of it all. It felt like a movie, a very bad one, with me as the protagonist, trying to figure out the plot. While I was wondering if this was all just a hallucination, Justin came back home. He acted normal, but I got straight to the point. Do you have any other phones?
What do you mean?
He asked, smiling nervously. I know everything. Just tell me the truth. He stood there, scratching the back of his head.
I really don't know what you're talking about.
I told him I heard his phones vibrating earlier and that I found them, but he still denied everything.
You should rest. You're imagining things. You're completely freaking out over nothing.
And then it happened again. From the shelf, we heard that same vibrating sound. That! Exactly that vibration, I said excitedly and ran to the shelf. When I opened it, I was stunned. The phone had been completely discharged when I put it back, but now the display was glowing brightly. I picked it up and the Facebook profile opened all by itself. After confronting him directly with this, he couldn't deny it anymore. It ended in a huge drama, with him crying, making up lies, excuses, weird explanations, the full act. I made him admit everything. He had been ordering all kinds of electronics in my father's name since, in his words, he was dead and no one would follow up on it. He only ordered in my name once, claiming it was an emergency because he lost his phone and planned to pay me back. As for the fake profile of me, he came up with some bizarre story about planning a birthday surprise with his best friend. None of it made sense, and I knew he was still lying. I couldn't trust someone like him. After he confessed, I packed some of his clothes and threw them out the window. I kicked him out and told him to come get the rest of his stuff once he paid all the bills. I kept all his valuable things and electronics. The drama didn't end there. He sent goodbye messages to his family, blaming me for his miserable life. played sad music outside my house at night while crying and sobbing. And one day, he even showed up with a group of guys to threaten me. That's when I knew he would never pay the bills. I realized he was a sick psychopath, and I was better off cutting contact completely. In the end, he caused about 20,000 euros in damages from unpaid bills and penalty fees. Luckily, I haven't seen him since. I changed my number, all my passwords, and the locks in the house. I've learned not to trust people too quickly. But what I still don't understand to this day is, what was going on with those phones? How did they turn on when they were completely discharged? And how did they seem to move as if controlled by a ghostly hand? I like to believe it was my father. While I was grieving for him, he showed me the truth about what kind of person Justin really was, and that I was better off without him. Honestly, if he hadn't intervened, I might have never found out.
Our anonymous storyteller learned the hard way that not all goodbyes are final. Was it a ghostly warning from her father, or just a digital quirk? Either way, Justin got the boot, and for good reason. I guess you could say, Dad still had a few things to clear up. Seeking spiritual enlightenment can lead us to places we never imagined. But what if one of those places is the threshold between life and death? In this story, our storyteller set out to heal, only to return with more than just a few answers.
Okay, Reddit, I need to get this off my chest. I don't really know where else to turn, and honestly, I'm not even sure how to process what happened. I went to an ayahuasca retreat last week, thinking it would be some kind of spiritual awakening, maybe life-changing. Instead, I think it almost ended my life. Here's some backstory. I'd been reading up on ayahuasca for a while. You know, all those stories about how it's supposed to help you face your trauma, unlock parts of yourself you didn't know existed, and give you this profound sense of self-discovery. I've been struggling with some personal stuff lately. A lot of unresolved things from my past, a lot of emotional baggage that I've been carrying around for years. I thought maybe ayahuasca could be the thing to help me process it all, to help me finally heal. So I figured, why not give it a shot? The retreat was deep in the Amazon, as authentic as you could get. Super remote, no phone service, just nature and a group of us looking for answers. The shaman seemed legit. He had this aura of wisdom, like someone who had seen things the rest of us couldn't even comprehend. I'll admit, I was nervous, but I was also excited. I went in expecting something intense, but, transformative in a good way. The first night was strange. We all gathered around the fire, and the shaman prepared the brew. I watched as each person took their turn drinking it, and when it was my turn, I hesitated for just a second before gulping it down. The taste was bitter, earthy, like something that had been sitting in the jungle for centuries. I felt the effects pretty quickly. My skin started tingling, like there were tiny ants crawling all over me. Everything around me became hyper-real, like the colors were turned up to max saturation. The trees, the sky, the fire, it all looked like it had been pulled straight from a cartoon. And then the visions started. They were intense, but not exactly overwhelming. Swirling patterns, faces morphing into animals, animals turning into landscapes. It was all pretty much what I had expected, nothing too crazy. But then came the second night. That's when things got really dark. We drank the brew again, and at first, it felt similar to the night before. The tingling, the vibrant colors, the sense that reality was bending. But then, it all changed. Everything around me went completely black. Not just dark, pitch black. It was like being swallowed by the void. No light, no sounds, just this endless, suffocating darkness. That's when I felt them. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but there were these presences around me. I couldn't see them, but I could feel them. They were close, almost pressing in on me. These weren't just shadows. They were something far worse, something malevolent. I could sense their intentions, like they wanted to hurt me, to tear me apart. Not physically, but spiritually. Then they started whispering. It wasn't in any language I could understand, more like emotions or concepts being forced into my mind. Fear, despair, hopelessness. It was like they were trying to infect my thoughts, to fill me with nothing but darkness. And then the draining started. I don't know how else to describe it, but I felt like my very life force was being sucked out of me. It was as if I was a battery, and these things were draining me dry. It was the most terrifying sensation I've ever felt in my life. I honestly thought I was dying. I knew I had to fight back. But how do you fight something you can't even see? I started screaming, thrashing around in the darkness, trying to push them away. But I couldn't see them, couldn't touch them. It was like I was punching through air, completely helpless. But I couldn't stop. There was this primal instinct inside me, this overwhelming urge to survive, to claw my way out of the darkness. So I did the only thing I could think of. I focused all my remaining energy, everything I had left, into this single point in my mind. I imagined a white-hot light burning inside of me, and I forced it to grow. I pictured it expanding, pushing back the shadows, driving them away. It was like a desperate scream, not out loud, but in my mind. And it started to work. Slowly, the whispers began to fade. The draining sensation lessened. I could feel the shadows recoiling, like the light was burning them. I kept pushing, kept focusing on that light, making it stronger and stronger until it filled my entire body. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. Everything went black again. But this time, it was different. It was peaceful, almost like sleep. The next thing I remember, I woke up in a hospital bed. I was hooked up to machines, and my body ached like I'd been through some kind of physical battle. My throat was raw, like I'd been screaming for hours. A doctor came in and told me that I'd had seizures during the ceremony and had been in a coma for 3 days. 3 days. I couldn't believe it. It felt like I had spent a lifetime in that darkness, fighting those shadows. To wake up and find out only a few days had passed, it didn't make any sense. The doctors ran all sorts of tests, but everything came back normal. No brain damage, no heart issues, no lasting effects from the seizures. They just chalked it up to a bad reaction to the ayahuasca. But I know it was more than that. I know what I felt. I know those presences were real. I don't care what the doctors say. I experienced something beyond just a bad trip. Since leaving the hospital, I've been trying to make sense of it all. Physically, I feel fine now, like nothing ever happened. But mentally, emotionally, that's a different story. I haven't been able to shake the feeling that a part of me is still trapped in that darkness, still fighting those shadows. Every now and then, I'll catch a glimpse of something in the corner of my vision, like a shadow darting away. And sometimes, when it's quiet, I can still hear those whispers. Faint but unmistakable. I'll be sitting alone, and suddenly I'll feel that same cold presence from the ceremony, like it's waiting just outside my awareness. I've tried talking to my friends about it, but they don't understand. They think I'm being dramatic or that I just had a bad trip. My family? They think I should never have gone to the retreat in the first place. They chalk it up to some sort of drug-induced paranoia. But I know what I experienced wasn't just in my head. What really gets me is the feeling that something came back with me. It's hard to describe, but I don't feel alone anymore, even when I'm by myself. It's like I brought a piece of that darkness back with me, like it's attached to me, waiting for the right moment to reemerge. Every time I close my eyes, I see glimpses of that black void, and I feel like I'm falling back into it. It's been a week since I left the hospital, and the more time passes, the more I realize that something changed in me during that ceremony. I feel disconnected from reality, like I'm not fully present. Even when I'm talking to people or going about my day, it's like part of me is somewhere else, still lost in that blackness. I've started to wonder if I actually did die during that ceremony. Maybe I never really came back. Maybe a part of me is still there, trapped in that void, while only a fragment of me returned to this world. I know that sounds crazy, but I can't shake the feeling that something fundamental has shifted. I don't know if I'll ever be the same again. So I'm reaching out to you, Reddit, because I need to know if anyone else has experienced something like this. Has anyone else gone through an ayahuasca trip and felt like they died? Like they encountered something dark and sinister that left a permanent mark on them? I feel like I'm losing my mind here, and I just need to know that I'm not alone in this. I don't regret going to the retreat. I think, on some level, I needed to face whatever it was that I saw. But now, I'm left with this lingering question. Did I survive, or did a part of me die in that darkness? And if I did die, even just a little bit, how do I move forward from here?
Next time someone suggests a life-changing retreat, maybe make sure it's not a one-way ticket to the other side. After all, enlightenment is great, just as long as you know the risks and bring your whole self back. One man thought a lightning strike was his brush with the beyond, but what followed was a far darker twist of fate. Visions of death, glimpses of the future, and no way to stop it. Let's see what happens when a gift from the afterlife turns into a terrifying curse.
Have you ever stared death in the face? I have. 10 years ago, a rogue bolt of lightning decided I looked like a good conductor. One second, I was standing there. The next, I wasn't. The moment the lightning hit, it didn't feel like pain, not in the way I thought lightning would hurt. It wasn't like being burned or electrocuted, more like annihilation. That's the best word I can think of. Like I was being unraveled bit by bit until there was nothing left but essence, pure consciousness, stripped bare. No body, no thoughts, just being. I've never been a religious guy, never had been. Spirituality was for hippies and crystal huggers, as far as I was concerned. The idea of anything beyond this life always felt like wishful thinking or the stuff of sci-fi movies. But that lightning bolt, it changed all of that. I know I died. I felt it. And then I came back. There was a tunnel. I know it sounds cliché, the kind of thing you hear about in near-death experiences all the time. But this wasn't some ordinary tunnel, not like the kind you walk through. It was more like a passage, but not a physical one. Swirling, iridescent, like oil on water, but 1,000,000 times more vibrant. Colors I didn't even know existed. It was beautiful. And it wasn't just visual. It was this feeling of being pulled along, like I was no longer in control. No sense of up or down, forward or back. Just movement. I wasn't scared, though. The speed was insane, but there was something oddly comforting about it. I felt like I was moving through time and space, but at the same time I wasn't bound by either. Just pure movement. Just being. I was awareness. Moving, flowing, drawn towards the light at the end of the tunnel. That's the hardest part to explain. It wasn't just light, like looking at a bright light bulb or the sun. It was everything. Pure, unconditional love, knowledge, peace, understanding. All the positive emotions you can imagine, amplified 1,000,000 times. When I talk about it now, words fail me. How do you describe something so intense, so complete? It wasn't just a sight, it was a feeling, a knowing. And within that light, there was something else, a presence. It didn't speak in words, not as we understand them. It communicated directly through feeling or resonating within me, like it was bypassing my mind and going straight to my soul. It was a download, but instead of words, it was more like entire concepts were just placed inside me. Everything made sense in that moment. Everything about the world, life, death. It was all so clear. I felt connected to everything. I could see how everything was intertwined, how life and death were part of this infinite cycle, the cyclical nature of existence. It felt like enlightenment, like finally understanding the secrets of the universe. And then, it told me about the mission. Not with words, but with that same deep, resonating feeling. I had a mission, a purpose. It didn't tell me what the mission was, just that I had one. And before I could even question it, I was yanked back. I was back in my body, in the world of the living. The transition was jarring, like waking from a vivid dream, only 1,000,000 times more intense. I woke up in the hospital, smelling of burnt flesh and antiseptic, feeling the weight of my physical form again. The world felt dull, muted, like a faded photograph compared to the vibrant reality I'd just experienced. And the understanding I'd had in that tunnel, it was still there, but I couldn't grasp it fully. It was like a word on the tip of your tongue that you just can't quite remember. I knew I'd experienced something profound, something life-changing, but I couldn't articulate it. It's like trying to describe a symphony to a deaf person. The doctors called it a miracle that I survived. I called it terrifying because I had no idea what I was supposed to do from then on. The doctors did all the tests and found nothing wrong. No brain damage, no physical issues. They said I was lucky, but I wasn't the same. The world was different, sharper in some ways, faded in others. I tried telling people what I had experienced, but no one really believed me. They patted my hand, muttered about the trauma, the shock. My wife, bless her heart, looked at me with a mixture of love and pity. My friends started avoiding me. Crazy old man struck by lightning, they probably whispered. I don't blame them. Who wants to be around the guy who keeps talking about dying and coming back? I became that guy, the one with the crazy near-death story. They didn't understand. How could they? They hadn't been there. They hadn't experienced the tunnel, the light, the presence. To them, it just sounded like ramblings, the ravings of a madman. And maybe, in a way, I am mad. Driven mad by a knowledge I couldn't comprehend, a mission I couldn't decipher. But the story didn't end there. That's when the flashes started. At first, I thought they were just remnants of the experience. Weird after effects of being struck by lightning. I'd see these brief images like a car crash, a fire, or a funeral. They were quick, over in a second, like a glitch in my mind. I wrote them off as nothing, just trauma playing tricks on me. Then they got worse. More vivid. More frequent. I could be having a conversation with someone and suddenly I'd see them dead. Crushed, burned, gone. It was horrific. The worst part, these weren't just random images. They started coming true. I began to realize what they were. They weren't hallucinations or stress-related episodes. They were premonitions. I was seeing the future, and not the good parts. I was seeing death over and over again, like a loop I couldn't escape. I've seen things that make my stomach churn, that keep me awake at night. I've seen death in 1,000 gruesome forms. And the worst part, I can't stop it. I can't change it. I'm a passive observer, forced to watch the horrors unfold. I've tried. God, how I've tried to stop it. I warned people when I saw something, tried to steer them away from what was coming. But it never worked. The future seemed fixed. No matter what I said or did, events unfolded exactly as I'd seen them. Every single time. Imagine the horror. Sitting across from your best friend, laughing at a joke, and suddenly seeing him crushed beneath a falling beam, knowing they're going to die in a week. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. Or having dinner with your family, only to see their faces, pale and lifeless in open caskets. It's a nightmare, a curse. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. For 10 years I've lived with this. 10 years of seeing death in every corner, of trying and failing to change what's coming. I've watched people I love die horrible deaths, knowing all along that I was powerless to stop it. And that mission? The one the presence told me about? I still don't know what it is. I've searched for answers, read every spiritual text I could get my hands on. I've meditated, prayed, even tried to communicate with that presence again. But there's been nothing, just silence. The flashes keep coming, though. They never stop. I haven't told anyone about this part. My family and friends already think I'm losing it. Telling them about the premonitions would push them away completely. So I've kept it inside, letting it eat away at me. But I can't keep it inside anymore. It's eating me alive. I need to talk about it, to share this burden, to find some understanding, maybe even some answers. That's why I'm here, telling strangers on the internet, because I don't know what else to do, where else to turn. Maybe someone out there has experienced something similar. I need someone, anyone, to understand. I need to figure out what my mission is before I lose my mind completely. Because I'm telling you, seeing the future, it's not a gift. It's a curse. A terrifying, inescapable curse. If anyone out there has experienced anything like this, please help me. I don't know how much longer I can keep going like this.
They say knowledge is power, but when you can't change what's coming, maybe ignorance really is bliss. So, if you ever get struck by lightning, well, let's just say, you might want to keep your eyes closed. Some things are better left in the dark. When death knocks and the door stays closed, sometimes something else slips through the cracks. What happens when a sweet old lady isn't the only one returning from the other side? Nana Elsie survived her stroke, but a part of her didn't come back alone.
All right, buckle up. This one messes with you. It's about my Nana Elsie. Sweetest old lady you ever met. Baked the best damn apple pie, always smelled like lavender and mothballs. She was the type of grandmother who kept old recipes tucked away in a weathered notebook and would always sneak you a cookie even if your parents said no. She had this peaceful aura, you know? Like no matter how chaotic life got, she was a calm harbor. But then she had that stroke. Almost took her out. When I say almost, I mean it. She flatlined for a good 3 minutes before they revived her. The doctor said it was a miracle she even pulled through. But honestly, I'm not so sure. It was more like something else came back with her. And when she came back, well, she wasn't exactly the Nana I remembered. She was different. Not bad different, just vacant. Like the lights were on, but nobody was home. Oh, sure, she looked the same. Same soft wrinkles, same kind smile, but there was something off. She just sat in her armchair, staring off into the distance, not even the TV on. No knitting, no baking, no gardening. It was like she'd lost her interest in all the things she used to love. And you know that feeling when you walk into a room and sense that something's just a bit wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it? That's what it was like being around her. We tried to talk to her, ask her what she saw, what she remembered. She'd just shake her head, mumble something about the gray place, and start crying. It was heartbreaking. My mom, her daughter, was a wreck, of course. She figured it was just post-stroke dementia, or maybe depression from the trauma. None of us were ready for what was really going on. The first signs that something was really wrong came at night. We'd hear these low, guttural whispers coming from her room. At first, we thought she was just talking to herself in her sleep, like some kind of stroke-related thing. But the whispers, they weren't Nana's voice. Too low, too unnatural. Like someone was right there, speaking just below hearing level, but you couldn't make out the words. It was enough to send a chill down your spine. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, straining to catch any familiar phrase, anything that could explain the sounds. But no. It was always just a mumble, like a conversation I wasn't meant to understand. Then came the smell. It wasn't lavender and mothballs anymore. At first, we thought maybe something was off with her hygiene, or maybe the house just needed a good airing out. But no matter how much we cleaned, aired, or sprayed, the smell wouldn't go away. It was this metallic, rotten stench, like old blood mixed with meat left out to spoil. It wasn't just in her room either. It started creeping down the hallway, clinging to everything. Her clothes, the curtains, even the furniture. All I could smell was death. One night I was staying over at my mom's. She was too overwhelmed, so I decided to help out for a bit. I couldn't sleep, though. The whispers were louder than usual, and that damn smell was everywhere. I figured maybe I'd just check on Nana, see if she needed anything, or maybe open a window for her. The hallway was dark, but the door to her room was cracked open. I walked over, planning to peek in quietly. What I saw in there, I'll never forget it. Nana Elsie was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide open but unblinking. She was staring at the ceiling, but not in that way people do when they're lost in thought. No, she was transfixed, like something was holding her gaze. At first I thought maybe she was having some kind of seizure or stroke episode again, but then I saw it. It wasn't the ceiling she was staring at. It was something on the ceiling, something clinging to it. My first thought was that it looked like a thick, gray mist, almost translucent, but it pulsed, like it had a heartbeat of its own. And the whispers, they weren't coming from Nana. They were coming from it. I froze and felt my heart hammering in my chest. That thing, it had faces. I swear to God, I saw hundreds of faces pressed against the membrane of the thing, all distorted and warped. Their eyes were black, empty pits, and their mouths were open, but no sound came out, only the whispers. The faces stared down at Nana, their skeletal hands reaching out, trying to grasp at her, as if they were stuck between worlds, and she was their only way out. I couldn't stop staring. The longer I looked, the more I felt like they were looking at me. And then I screamed. My mom came running, flipped on the light. The thing vanished, just gone, like it had never been there. And Nana? She blinked, looked over at us, confused as hell, like she had no idea why we were standing there. We never saw the thing again after that night. The whispers stopped, the smell faded. It was like everything just went back to normal. Nana started recovering. Slowly but surely, she even started baking again and got back into tending her roses. Nana never talked about it. She never mentioned the gray place or the whispers or what happened in those 3 minutes when she was gone. I think my mom asked her once, but Nana just shook her head, her eyes going all misty, and said, "It's best not to remember." And that was it. The topic was dropped, and life moved on. But me? I know what I saw. I know what clung to the ceiling of her room that night. And I think, deep down, Nana knows too. She just doesn't want to talk about it. I can't blame her. Some things are better left buried. But it makes me wonder, what did Nana see in that gray place? What came back with her? Was it some kind of spirit? A demon? Or something even worse? I don't know.
Well, folks, we've tiptoed along the edge of the afterlife tonight. And if there's one thing we've learned, it's that death doesn't always like to play by the rules. Whether it's a lightning bolt giving you a glimpse of eternity, or Nana bringing back some unexpected guests, one thing's clear: you don't come back the same. Now, before you crawl back under the covers, hit that subscribe button and that bell if you dare. After all, you wouldn't want to miss what's waiting for you next, would you?